In 2018, I was diagnosed with lymphoma. And as you know, so many people in our lives have had cancer or have some experience of cancer. And it's a shock when that happens. And I think as a creative person, I really didn't know what to do and where I was going to, if I was going to live or die, actually, to be honest. And it was really a shock to my system, and it was a shock to my whole life. And my life has changed completely since then. And as a result, I created this collaborative art project called Can You Make Hair For Me? And I invite people to make hair for me. I also make some of the hair myself. And they're out of surprising materials and different kinds of things. And I want to talk a little bit about how I arrived at doing that. So I'm going to change slides. And so when you first get diagnosed with cancer, it really, like I said, is a shock. And your body changes both inside and outside. And it's very difficult trying to get your sense of self back. And before I had cancer, I was a photographer, I was in school, I had a social life, I was a runner. And once you have a life-changing event like that happen, it makes you reevaluate what you do, and it makes you reevaluate how you live your life. And as a creative person, it really made me think about what I was doing creatively. I'm a portrait photographer, and most of my portraits are based on people that I meet, strangers that I walk into. Here, I'm at the beach. I live on Cape Cod, and I'm lucky enough to have access to the beach all year long. And I love to sort of beachcomb, but I beachcomb for people. I beachcomb for shells and stuff too. But I'm mostly looking at people, and I have favorite places that I go. And I shot this picture about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And it was the first time that I had been out since the quarantine, and I was out shooting strangers. So it has taken me at least a year to get back to what I was doing. And I live in a community that's very transient, and I love the tourists, and I love interesting people. And I think that I look for people who wear great clothes or have great color. My work is very color based. I don't think I could make a black and white portrait. I wish I could, but that's just not my strong suit. I'm really attracted to color. And where I live, there are very different communities by the beach. This is in Dennisport, not far from where I live in Yarmouth. And there's a large summer community of Eastern Europeans. And a lot of people don't know that. So this is one of the communities I like to visit, and I like to meet people there. And I like to look for bright clothing. I do a lot of street photography on the beach, right? So this is another example of a portrait that I've done, walking along the beach, meeting people, having an interaction, and I met this young woman. So when I started to get sick, I really wasn't able to do this kind of work anymore. I've been quarantined and in my house since November, and I had a stem cell transplant in November. I shot this last summer, and I was really interested. I'm showing this picture because this really, to me, shows a bunch of people who are very isolated and who are not communicating and who aren't relating and aren't even really relating to the environment. And I think all of us, having been in quarantine, I think we experience a bit of that, not maybe at first relating to our environments or relating to ourselves. And I think the quarantine really makes you sort of lose your sense of self. And this picture became relevant to me because of that. I also like to just shoot people who love to have their picture taken, and this woman did. So this is another shot that I was able to do last summer. I was very limited I was very limited with the times I could go out, when it was safe. I was getting chemo last summer, and I was also starting the project. And this is another one of my street pictures. So this gives you a good sense of the kind of work that I was doing before I started the Can You Make Hair For Me project. Um, I love this picture. I often would chase people because I'm a runner, and if I see someone who is dressed fabulously like this woman is, I would chase them. And I think as artists, on some level, you see what you're shooting, but then again, you don't. And I have to be honest that I did not see the sharks until I went to process this, really take a good look. I kind of saw them, but then I didn't realize they were there. And that relates to my hair project in that I think when you're out on the street and you're shooting people, you get a really good sense of expression. You really start to understand how people use their faces. This I shot last week, and I had about a minute with this couple. And you really kind of can get a sense of people if you can, and how their faces work when you've shot as many portraits as I have. And I just love the way the two of them looked. And I also look for that disconnection. And I think that disconnection also shows up in the Can You Make Hair For Me project. And this is a picture that Chuck, actually, I gave to Chuck. So he has a copy of this. And I apologize, this isn't really great quality. This is my friend Amy. And I'm showing this to you because Amy came to visit me. She lives on Nantucket, and she came to visit me. And when she did, she told me that she had multiple myeloma. And that's also a blood cancer. And this was about a year, I think, before I found out that I had cancer, before I developed cancer. So this picture has special meaning to me. Amy had lost her hair when I shot this, and we had stopped at a local, beachside shop, and I picked up this chair. And I threw it in the car and I said, "Come on, let me take your picture." And what I didn't realize, and I realize now, is that when you have cancer, or maybe when you have a serious illness where your body changes and your mind changes so much, that Amy was very receptive to me taking her picture. I'm used to going up to strangers and convincing them that, let me take your picture. It's a really good idea. I love what you're wearing. I love what you're doing. And, it was so easy for me to take Amy's picture. And that was a quality that later I ended up with. This is my friend Patty. And about the same time that Amy found out she had multiple myeloma and was going through chemotherapy, my friend Patty was going through radiation. And she had cancer in her jaw. And before all of this happened, I really had no idea what the cancer process was like. I didn't know anything about radiation. I didn't know anything about chemotherapy. And I went over to Patty's house to visit her, and she was kind enough to put her radiation mask on for me. And it was so difficult and so frightening for her. Yet, because we were friends, she let me take her picture with this. And I now understand that because, this was during my treatment. And I think I took this picture, during my treatment, although Patty had cancer before I did. And she was, at this point, she was finished with treatment. But the sight of the mask was frightening to her. But again, like Amy, she was willing to let me take her picture because her life had changed and she had a different perspective. So these two pictures are very important to me because these are close friends of mine. And we all went through a very similar kind of treatment and a similar situation. Oh, I do have to mention pot roast. So in my experience having cancer, when I ended up with cancer, the thing that people wanted to do was feed me. They wanted to help any way they could. And my friends were so generous and so kind, and my family was so supportive. But they kept bringing me food that I couldn't eat. And I would open the fridge and I would look in and I'd see all of this food. And when you have chemotherapy, you're on anti-nausea drugs. You feel nauseous most of the time. And the last thing you want to do is eat a pot roast. But I got a lot of them. So I decided to take that energy that people had they wanted to make me something. And most of them made me food. So I thought to myself, why don't I take that energy and ask people, to create with me and collaborate with me. Because one of the things that happens with cancer is that I think people don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to. We have a lot of language that's limited when it comes to cancer, when it comes to illness. And there's a lot of militaristic metaphors that really are outdated and don't really suit the experience that one has when being treated for cancer or any other serious illness. And I'm showing this slide because of the kale, because, in the first slide, I think you might have noticed that I was wearing kale. And the reason I was wearing kale is because a good friend of mine came over to my house with a huge grocery bag full of kale and a super blender. And I was angered by this. I didn't let it show. I was appreciative that I got all these vegetables and I got the blender. But I think that there's still this feeling in cancer that you can heal yourself, or if you had only taken better care of yourself and eaten more kale, you wouldn't have gotten cancer. And I really felt like with my project, I wanted to sort of, poke fun maybe at that idea, even though it's not particularly funny. I really wanted to point it out because, it's not your fault. And there are still people out there who think maybe you went swimming in the wrong lake, or you used the wrong bug spray, or you didn't eat enough kale. These are two portraits of me, and one is when I had hair, and obviously the second one is after I'd lost my hair. And I want to point out that I did not take these, and I didn't take most of the pictures. I didn't take any of the pictures in the project. I consider this a self-portrait project. However, it's collaborative, and my partner Tom takes the bulk of the pictures that you've seen. You'll see in this project, and I set up the shots. We discussed what we're going to do. I art direct. I, figure out what to do with the hair that people make me. But I want to thank Tom because he took these two pictures of me. This is a couple of pictures of me during treatment. And it's hard for me to look at them now, but this was only last summer. And during this time, one of them is from the stem cell. One of them is just before. And my life has changed so much since then. And I think that anybody who goes through this would understand what I'm talking about. The very first picture I took in the project was this one. And I tend to order stuff on Amazon like a lot of people. So I might see something that I think is kind of cool and then I'll order it, but I might not have a use for it. And I ordered this silver makeup. I ordered silver, I ordered bronze, I ordered green, and I had it just in the closet. And one day, while my hair this is in between chemo treatments and my hair had started to grow back, I decided to do a self-portrait. And I was terrified to have my picture taken. I was terrified. It took me 6 weeks to look in the mirror when I started losing my hair. But once I did, I became oddly fascinated with my head as an object. And I became really fascinated with the possibilities of not having hair. This is the very first portrait in the project. And we did not have lighting. We just kind of treated this as a snapshot. My friend John made these curlers out of pottery, and this piece weighs about 8 pounds and it's absolutely fabulous. And he made hair through a spaghetti maker. He took the clay and he put it through and he brought this to me. And once this started and people got an illustration of what the project could be, many more people started to make items for me, and I was thrilled. And I get the clothes from the local thrift stores and consignment stores, and they've been very kind to me. I'm not going to read my artist statement. I just want to talk about a few points in the artist statement. I went to graduate school for advertising, and I'm very much influenced by publicity photos, by fashion photography, by sexist print ads from the 60s and 70s. And I really, on some level, I've included that in this work. I consider this work almost like an ad campaign, like a bad ad campaign. But it's an ad campaign without a headline. And I feel like this is a series of colorful and alternative selves, because I didn't have a self anymore. And as a portrait photographer, I really wanted to be out shooting and taking pictures of people, but I couldn't. I was quarantined. So I had to use what I had around me. And so I used myself, and I used my friends, and I collaborated, and I tried to sort of build a bridge between my little community here and make some joy and levity for other people who might be going through cancer. So this is a publicity photo, and I found this 2 weeks ago. And I'm laughing because, I had never seen this before. It's from 1982. And about 3 months before, I had shot this. And I was just like shocked at, the similarities between the two pictures, and how I really, I had worked at Capitol Records as an intern in college, and I had seen so many of these publicity photos. So it's possible I had seen that Bob Geldof photo. But on some level, that sort of falseness and the artifice of the publicity photo really interests me. I love that everything's fake. And in my project, everything is fake. And it's sort of all about the fakeness and the falseness of advertising and isolation. Again, I have a series of ads that I've put into this presentation, because I love this sort of thing. It's so dated, it's so sexist, but it's funny to me on some level. And I really wanted to connect with that history that I had studied about classic advertising and about the man in the Hathaway shirt and those kinds of things. But I thought, what about the woman who sees her face in the dish when she's washing the dishes? What if she doesn't like what she sees? Because in the old advertising, everybody was happy. Everybody got what they wanted. And, look at that beautiful woman whose reflection is in the dish. Well, what if it's not like that? And here's another one. And I love this one because the makeup is so natural. You can't believe it's makeup. So I made this. And this is a crazy piece made out of corn husks that was sent to me by a friend who lives locally in Massachusetts. And I really just kind of wanted to go over the top with it because it itself was over the top. And in the publicity photos for this talk, I'm wearing it upside down. I sometimes wear it straight up and down. Sometimes I flip it around and it becomes a completely different thing. So there's a picture of me eating corn, and that's the same piece as you see in this photo. Who doesn't love a platinum blonde, right? Let's be platinum tonight. So I created one. In this picture, I'm pretending to be Dolly Madison on 4th of July. And what Dolly Madison does on 4th of July is her nails. Yeah, bad joke. But I really kind of love the idea of using something that I had either in the closet or in the bathroom. Now, I made this one. And there's great stuff. I found out that actors know a lot about how to get stuff to stick to your body. And there's all kinds of glue you can use. So I have some really great roll-on glue that I use to help me with this project. And these clothes, the little jumper that I'm wearing was donated to me by a friend. But I love Dolly Madison. Add some sunshine to your smile. So lipstick, another just classic ad for Avon. And I love that because I feel like the poses are just so classic that I really wanted to kind of bring that to my project. But I also wanted to show the isolation of having cancer and of the cancer treatment process. My project mimics the cancer treatment process in that when you have cancer, you give yourself over to a team of people who know much better than you, who are specialized in that field, and you have to put your trust in those people. So when I created this project, I decided that I was going to trust people to make hair for me. And this is a scarf that my partner Tom found in the thrift store, kind of wrapped around my head. So I give them the control to make something for me, but then I sort of take that control back and that creativity back, and I art direct and I choose what the final picture is going to be. And one of the things I'd like to mention about the project is the people that make the hair are invited to take the pictures, and very few take me up on that. I love to show people how to use the camera. And, I'm working in a very small room. This is a spare room that I have in my house. I'm using a 50 millimeter lens. So we really can't shoot a full body shot of me because of the tight quarters that we have. But anyone's willing, who wants to come in can come in and take the pictures. And this I got, this was left to me. I think this might have been on the porch. Sometimes people leave things on my porch and I come home and there's a box or there's some produce or, who knows what it could be, hula hoops. And this is a homemade tutu. And, she said to me, why don't you just see if you can use it? And believe it or not, I had a matching dress in my closet because I go to the thrift store and I find the craziest things and I buy them and then I just wait. Sometimes it takes months for me to get a character together. And this one came together when I realized I had everything. I had dressed the same colors. This to me looks like a Clinique ad. And this was made by a professor at Lesley University, a professor of expressive therapy. And I was invited in January to come and speak to her class because what I'm doing with this project is it falls very much into an expressive therapy modality because I truly believe that, we can, help ourselves and help heal ourselves through activity. I think activity is so important that if something happens to you in life, that you stay active, that you make things or you collaborate with people who are also making things. I think it frees up your brain. It helps you to think of other possibilities and it helps you to solve problems in different ways. And I absolutely love this piece and it's falling apart and I still have it. And to me, this looks like a Clinique ad. And I just love it. This one is fairly recent. I have a friend here on the Cape who helps people with their bikes, and she owns a little bike shop. And she left me these bike tires about 3 months ago, but I couldn't figure out what to do with them. And there's a number of people, characters in the project that are based on real people. And I call this woman Miss Unphotogenic. And this is a tribute to all of the people in the world who, really are not photogenic. And I think that I honor them. I had an aunt, and no matter what she did, we could not get a good picture of her. No one could. Her hair would be sticking up. She'd be making a funny face, or she'd be, wiping some sleep out of her eyes. But it's so difficult to have your picture taken. And that's one thing that I don't think models get enough credit, because now, having been a model, I realize how difficult it is and how hard it is to get your face in the right place, to get just the right expression. But this is an homage to those who hate to have their picture taken. This is also based on a real person. And I got all of these. This is one that I made. And this came from the bargain bin at Michael's. I got all of these things, the beehive and the butterflies and the nest and everything from the bargain bin. When I was growing up, I grew up in Yonkers, New York, which was a very urban suburb of New York City. And I had a next door neighbor who used to like to, check on her kids and come outside and see what they were playing and doing in the street. And everyone on my block had a huge stairway to get into their house. So Mrs. Migden would get on the kitchen phone. She was always on the phone. I don't think I ever saw this woman not on the phone. But she had the longest telephone cord I've ever seen, because she would manage to go out of the kitchen, through the living room, down, the flight of steps, down the driveway, and she'd be in the street. And she'd be standing there next to her kids, and she wouldn't miss a beat, and she'd still be talking on the phone. And she was always fabulously dressed. I love this piece because it was made by a friend of mine and her young neighbor. I think her neighbor was about 10 years old. And they collaborated, and they went through their recycle bin and got newspapers and straws that were in the house, and they had recycled bottles, plastic bottles, toilet paper rolls, cardboard, everything. And they had such a great time doing it. And I think that's really what the art is. It's the process of people making things. And it's the process of them communicating and making and problem solving. And I feel so strongly that that's the benefit of this. It's not really the pictures that are that important. I feel so honored that I can be the catalyst for someone's conversation with their daughter or their neighbor or their friend about what to make, how to engineer it, and what the materials should be. Last week, I was asked to present to a camp, a virtual camp in Boston. Everybody was still getting together online via Zoom. So I showed a lot of my pictures to 7 and 8-year-olds, and they got to make their hair. And we talked a lot about engineering, and I showed this piece, and it's structured with cardboard. And I was amazed at what the kids came up with. They just needed a few visuals, and they could see how things were constructed. And part of the camp, part of this class at the camp was showing construction and teaching engineering on a basic level to kids. This is Mr. Labor Day. As I mentioned before, I live in a tourist economy, and we are a transient, vacation land. And last Labor Day, I was at line in my local Dunkin', and this man was standing behind me. And he's fidgeting, and he's playing with his wallet, and he's scratching his face, and he's, moving his hair around. And so I just was lucky to get a glimpse of him, and I just loved him. So I ran right home, and I made a character out of him. And a lot of times when I receive pieces and hair from people, I call them heads. When I receive heads from people, they're packed with something. So my friend Tina, who made the corn husks, had put some corn silk in the box when she sent me the hair. And I was, I'm kind of like a pet. I'm kind of like a dog or cat. I was really interested in the packing that came with what she made. I loved what she made, but I loved the corn silk that she packed it in. And it made a fabulous comb over for Mr. Labor Day. And I looked for him this Labor Day, but I didn't see him. I would have loved to have shown him this picture. This is a gentleman who I would walk by on my way to school in the morning, to high school, and he would be outside watching his own young kids go up to the elementary school. I didn't know his name, and I still don't, and I've not seen him since I was in high school. And I would pass him nearly every day, and he'd be just staring down the street, making sure his kids got to the end of the block. And when they turned the corner, he would go inside. But he was usually outside, either in his pajamas or some sort of like crazy outfit that you knew he had just rolled out of bed. Now, this is made of electrical tape, and I will say that this was my idea. I thought, I'm going to use electrical tape. Do not do this. Electrical tape is great. It really sticks. And it's really hard to get off. So, and very painful. So I probably took whatever hair was growing. By the time I ripped this electrical tape off, I think I took most of my hair out with it. But the great thing about tape is that you can kind of shape your face with it. And I just, as a material, it was something I wanted to explore. But I probably won't do that again. This is another photo that's based in a publicity photo. So I sort of again, I receive these boxes with heads in them and, hair, but I'm sometimes really interested in what they're packed in. And so this was some packing material that came in the box. So I was like really, really excited. I was like a cat. I was kind of like playing with this material. And I stuck it on my head and it looked fabulous. And I came up with this character. He's like an old folky. He's like a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young kind of guy. It's like Sturgill, Montgomery, Taylor, Crosby. And when I worked at Capitol Records for the brief time that I did in college, the publicity photos that I would get sometimes would be so false and so, the people would be making these crazy faces. And I remember like one must have come through the office where this folky was so earnest. You knew that he believed everything and everything he sang and everything he wrote, even if he wrote terrible songs. He believed them. And this picture is about him. This guy, about 15 years ago, this guy came to fix my toilet, and I've never forgotten him. And he had this like giant beard, and he was very kind of like came in with all the tools, and he was all ready to go. And he had on his plaid and his hat. And this particular piece is made, I think, from a pom-pom. It was made by another Leslie expressive therapy student. And she made this piece for me, and I think her name's Sophie. And Sophie made this for me to either wear on my head or to wear as a beard. And I've worn it both ways. I don't have the one with me having it on my head, but it's on my Instagram if you want to see it. But I love this because it was another thing that somebody came up with that could be used in a different way, a couple of different ways, and I absolutely love that. This is the dancing boss. So this is the boss I had when I worked at a pharmacy in high school. This is made out of car mats, and it sort of makes great. It sort of you can cut it and fit it right over your ears, and it's perfect. And I went into Tom's closet and grabbed a shirt and a tie. But this guy would dance, and he listened to really bad music in the pharmacy. And at that time, you could smoke. So he used to smoke in the pharmacy, which is kind of shocking when you think about it now. And I never met his wife, but I imagine that he was married to this woman, because this woman is like, I am so sick of your dancing. She is also made out of car mats, and she wants a ring and some bling, I think, and is very fashionable, where he was just sort of kind of goofy. My friend Patty has supplied materials or made 4 different heads for me. Now, she was the picture earlier of the woman in the radiation mask, but she's really kind of supported this project and hopped on board. And anytime that she can help me, she's given me clothes to wear. She's giving me vegetables. So one day she left me cabbage. And I got this, I had it in the refrigerator, and I said, oh, I've got to use this quickly. I can't keep the cabbage in the fridge. So I came up with this character. This is Uncle Dupree. And so Uncle Dupree is sort of that guy that you kind of think you might be related to, but you don't know, who shows up at like the holiday party, who always drinks too much. He eats too many cheese cubes. He gets drunk. And then he says something really inappropriate and offends everybody. And it's based on a Steely Dan song, if anybody's a Steely Dan fan, and there's a song called Uncle Dupree. He usually shows up to the party with this person. Now, I call this woman the mono eater. And I think somewhere in life, we've all met or heard of that person that only eats one thing, or they're only eating one color food. So this is based on somebody that I had worked with years ago when I worked in a newsroom. And this guy was only eating carrots, like all summer long. That's all he wanted to do was eat carrots. And then somebody else in the newsroom would say, oh, my son, Johnny, he's only eating white food right now. So we all know somebody who's just like, only eating one kind of food. So I thought Patty had left me this lettuce as well. And I sort of took the lettuce apart, and it made this fabulous hair. I mean, who knew? And I will admit that I'm wearing my own clothes in this shot because at this point I was quarantined, and I was unable to leave the house for about 6 weeks. So this was made during that time, and I was forced to use whatever I could find in my own closet. I'm embarrassed to admit. And this is just a fabulous piece. And this is made by friends Mark and Gretchen, who live in Louisville, Kentucky. And Mark is a musician, and he and Gretchen went around to the community of musicians that they know, and they donated guitar, banjo, mandolin, and bass strings, and made this beautiful glam rocker for me. I call this glam rocker Get Low. And they took a piece of window screening and threaded the strings through it. And then they based it on a baseball cap, but took the bill off the baseball cap. And again, like I was saying earlier, sometimes I have like this crazy makeup in my closet because I ordered it months before, but I had this silver. So I thought this would be great. And as a side note, well, this weighs, let me tell you, this weighs probably about 8 or 10 pounds. It's very heavy and it's really hard to balance. So while you can't see my arm, it's kind of keeping it on my head. But I want to just mention something about the name, Get Low. So glam rocker Get Low. During my treatment, there was one medical professional that did not believe that I had lymphoma or cancer or was sick at all. And because of that person, my treatment was delayed for 6 months. And I went through about 4 to 6 months of terrible pain. I was very sick. I was exhausted. And I just kind of wanted to give that person a shout out. So I kind of scrambled up her name. But this is for you, Dr. Gitlow. This is a great piece made by a woman I went to high school with, who turns out lives not far from me. And we have lots of parks and lots of natural areas. And she went and she got reindeer moss, pine cones, birch bark, and leaves, and all kinds of things. And she made this fabulous piece for me. And again, this harkens back to my history with advertising. I feel like this is an ad. This woman could be selling perfume. She could be selling a lot of stuff. And I live near a conservation land, and I was able to run over there and get some of these beautiful ferns. But this is one of my favorite pieces. And we're coming to the end, but this is also one of my favorite pieces. So this is made out of pipe insulation, or it's kind of like a swimming noodle. A friend of mine was a professor at the Savannah College of Art and Design. And when he found out I was sick, he sent me 2 pieces. And I came home one day and this huge box was on my porch. And I picked it up expecting it to be heavy, and it only weighed like half a pound. And I got home and I put it on, and it was so large. Like I was saying before, we use a 50 millimeter lens. I'm in a very small room. We've painted the backdrop gray. We use a flash that's bounced off the white ceiling. And we couldn't quite fit it all in, but I think it's so appropriate that, I'm kind of cut off, and it's sort of space aged and really wonderful. And I want to thank Steve for making that for me. It's fabulous. I touched on briefly in the beginning the language that's used around cancer. And I think the language is limited. And as I mentioned, it's militaristic. Everyone's going through a battle, or they lost their battle with cancer. So it implies that the person that has cancer is a loser of some sort. And I really hated that. But I received this piece made by a contractor and an artist named Stanley. And Stanley's wife had been through breast cancer a number of years before. And he had this copper in his workshop, and he made me this sort of warrior piece, battle piece. And while I don't agree with that sort of language, it is something that everyone uses. And I decided that this piece was so beautiful, and I wanted to shoot it, and I wanted to do it justice, and I absolutely love it. And the ponytail is fantastic. And here it is from the front. And it doesn't quite fit, and it left some dents in my head. And it was really heavy. And lastly, so just winding things up, and I appreciate you all listening to me drone on about my project. This is a piece made by a woman named Kim, whose brother had passed away from pancreatic cancer. And there's a lot of different shots of this piece, and I happen to like this view, but she took this wig and she attached flags to it, and there are about 30 flags on it. And she wrote to me and she told me that this is a memorial for people who've died of cancer and to her brother. So I wanted to make something really silly and joyful out of it. So I created Miss Lymphoma 2019. I think I did this. And I want to end on that note because this was a really happy image to shoot. We had fun doing it, and the project has been so great. And I'm so grateful for all of the support. And we hope that this will become a book. We're working on making it a book. So maybe at some point I'll have news about that. So thank you for having me. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love to hear them.
Brad, can you unmute our attendees and see if there's a question in our audience tonight?
Yeah, so if you have a question, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. Melissa, I'm unmuting Melissa right now. If you have trouble with your audio, you can just post a question in the Q&A and Chuck and I can read it off.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
First of all, Eileen, thank you so much for doing this. You're absolutely fabulous. Your work is incredible. Really, really appreciate you doing this.
Oh, thank you, Melissa.
I'm not going to put you on the spot like they did on TV the other morning with what's your favorite, but I am going to put you on a spot a different way.
Okay.
Did you ever one that not necessarily that you didn't like, but that maybe you looked at it and said, I don't know about putting that on my head? Were you a little intimidated about actually being able to wear it?
Yes, absolutely. So I have very few rules for this project, and I'll wear pretty much anything that people will supply to me or give to me, or if it's materials, I try to use them. But I do reserve the right to disassemble and reimagine anything that someone gives to me. And so there have been a number of pieces that I've taken apart and used in a different way than they were intended. So yeah, yes is the answer to that. I mean, sometimes you get a piece and you don't really know what to do with it. And it might take me a month or two to figure it out. And then some of them just need to be torn apart and just kind of, reimagined and put back together again. So I do that.
We have a comment from Wendy Don just expressing great appreciation for your wonderful presentation. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question while we're still live? So Eileen, I have a question. There's been so much acclaim about this work. You've had multiple exhibits. Your work is shown in a cancer ward. And I think you're headed to an exhibit in Paris in just the coming month or months.
Yes.
Where do you think this is all going, and how do you know when to stop?
That's a really great question. Well, I have two things to say. The first is, when I started this project, I never intended that I would be the subject of it. I thought, people make a hair and I'll get somebody else to wear it, right? And I quickly realized that I needed to be the person to wear it. But in the long term, what my vision really is that people can make hair for their friends and family who are going through chemotherapy, and they can do this project on their own. And I would love to see their pictures, or I would love to come and photograph them. And that's what I'd really like to see happen. And in terms of the project and me, my hair will now grow back, but I shave it off for the project so that when hair comes in, I can wear it and I can model it properly. But what I envision is that, I'd love to get 100 pieces, and I'm very close. I think we're at 85 now, or something close to that. So I'd really like to make 100, and then, if people want to make things for me, I'll always wear them and model them. But my goal is to reach 100.
We have another comment from Janet Petty, who just says that she'd like to pay honor to the creativity and upbeat joy that is exhibited in this project. It's really amazing. And I would add, similar to Janet, that there's so many artists who through adversity or illness go inward, and they go to a very dark place, and they use their art as a cathartic experience. And I mean, one could think of Frida Kahlo, who was obviously friend of Diego Rivera. And if you look at her splendid oil paintings, I mean, she's disemboweled, she's wrapped in these devices, and has a very awkward expression on her face most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But such extraordinary images, and you've done something so out of the box, which is to create levity and joy in the face of adversity. How on earth did you ever get to this place? It's so wonderful.
Well, I think that, cancer is all about waiting, right? You wait for treatment. You wait for test results. You wait in waiting rooms. And, there's a schedule to cancer. There's a schedule to the different stages, and, particularly with lymphoma. And I had been around so many waiting rooms and so many fusion wards and chemo wards, and no one's happy. And why would you be? I wasn't happy. And I really felt like if there was one thing that I could do, was I could try to make people laugh. I could try to bring some color and some fun to their lives, because this is so difficult and the treatments are so hard to go through. And I really tried. I thought of them. I was thinking of everyone who's gone through this, and I wanted to give them something to enjoy.
What a great note to end on. Eileen Powers, our distinguished photographer for the month of July. Thank you for making joy for the electrical tape, for all the humor that's been created, and good luck on the next 15 heads of hair and all the success that will come with it. Thank you so much.
Thank
Eileen
you.
Powers.
And if anyone wants to make hair or knows somebody who would love to make hair, you can message me on Instagram. I'm happy to help you or direct you or work together with you. Thank you, Chuck. And thank you so much for supporting my project. I'm so appreciative to everyone. Thank you.